5 true camping horror stories. 1. The haunting campsite. The sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows that stretched like bony fingers across the forest floor. The air was thick with the scent of damp earth and fallen leaves as my friends and I made our way deeper into the woods. We had heard rumors of a secluded campsite that promised an escape from the hustle and bustle of the modern world, and with the promise of adventure and solitude, we eagerly ventured into the heart of the wilderness. The campsite was nestled in a clearing surrounded by towering trees that seemed to stand as silent sentinels, guardians of the secrets that lay within. We set up our tents, built a crackling campfire, and settled in for a night of camaraderie beneath the twinkling stars. As the fire crackled and the darkness enveloped us, we shared stories and laughter, the soothing sounds of nature providing the perfect backdrop to our evening. But as the night wore on, a sense of unease began to settle over the group. It started with a faint whispering in the wind, a distant murmur that seemed to emanate from the very trees themselves. I dismissed it as a trick of the imagination, a product of the eerie isolation of our campsite. But as the whispers grew louder, they took on a more sinister tone, like the murmurs of long-forgotten souls seeking to communicate from beyond the grave. We huddled closer to the campfire, our faces etched with concern. Shadows moved in the periphery of our vision, dark, amorphous forms that seemed to dart and dance just beyond the glow of the flames. We exchanged nervous glances, but no one dared to speak the words that hung heavy in the air. Something was terribly wrong in this secluded wilderness. The fire crackled and popped, casting grotesque shapes on the forest floor. And that's when we saw them, eerie figures that emerged from the shadows, cloaked in tattered garments and with hollow, lifeless eyes. They approached our campfire in a slow, deliberate procession. Fear gripped our hearts as we realized we were not alone in this desolate place. The figures encircled us, their presence suffocating, their movements deliberate and otherworldly. They spoke not a word, but their intentions were unmistakable. They were the vengeful spirits of those who had come before us, protectors of the sacred ground, and they viewed our presence as a trespass upon their realm. As the night wore on, the spirits' torment intensified. Unearthly cries echoed through the trees, and the very ground beneath our feet seemed to tremble with their rage. The fire dimmed to a feeble glow, and we clung to each other in terror, our minds unraveling under the weight of the supernatural onslaught. Desperation consumed us, and we knew that we had to appease the vengeful spirits or face a fate worse than death. With trembling hands, we offered our heartfelt apologies, pledging to leave this sacred land and never return. As if in response, the spirits' torment abated, and they retreated into the shadows, their hollow eyes fixed upon us until they disappeared from view. We wasted no time in dismantling our camp, leaving behind the eerie clearing and the chilling memories it held. As we made our way back to civilization, the weight of our encounter with the vengeful spirits lingered, a haunting reminder that some places in the world are best left undisturbed. The haunting campsite had changed us, leaving us with a profound sense of dread and the knowledge that the boundaries between the living and the dead are sometimes perilously thin. We had trespassed on sacred ground, and the vengeful spirits had made sure we would never forget the price of our intrusion. 2. The Vanishing Lake. The journey to the picturesque lakeside campsite had been filled with excitement and anticipation. My family and I longed for a peaceful retreat from the chaos of our daily lives, and the promise of tranquility by the water's edge beckoned us. Little did we know that our idyllic getaway would soon turn into a nightmarish descent into the unknown. The campsite was everything we had hoped for, an expansive, shimmering lake surrounded by lush forests, its waters reflecting the azure sky like a perfect mirror. We set up our tents along the shoreline, the gentle lapping of the water providing a soothing lullaby as we drifted off to sleep. The first night was a dream, a tranquil evening of stargazing by the campfire, our laughter and the crackling flames merging into a symphony of serenity. We felt at one with nature, a part of the world in perfect harmony. But when we awoke the next morning, our world had been turned upside down. The once pristine lake had vanished, leaving behind an abyss-like chasm that seemed to stretch into eternity. The sun hung high in the sky, casting its harsh light onto the surreal landscape. Confusion and disbelief gripped us as we stood at the edge of the gaping void. The lake, which had been our source of solace and serenity, had simply ceased to exist, as if it had been erased from the very fabric of reality. Panic gnawed at the edges of our minds, and we knew that something inexplicable and malevolent had taken hold of our campsite. As we attempted to leave the campsite, our sense of disorientation deepened. The forest that had surrounded us the night before seemed to have shifted, the trees looming like gnarled sentinels with branches that reached out like skeletal fingers. The once familiar path that had led us to our campsite now appeared twisted and treacherous, leading us in bewildering circles. Time lost all meaning in this nightmarish landscape. Our watches and phones had become useless relics, their screens frozen in a state of perpetual confusion. Day and night blurred together, and the boundaries of reality seemed to have unraveled. Desperation consumed us as we wandered through the twisted forest, searching for an escape that remained maddeningly elusive. The air grew heavy with a sense of malevolence, and strange, otherworldly noises echoed through the trees. Whispers carried on the wind, eerie laughter that sent shivers down our spines, and the faint cries of something that lurked just beyond our field of vision. With each passing day, our sanity eroded further, and the surreal landscape seemed to feed off our fear and confusion. We encountered strange, grotesque creatures, twisted manifestations of the natural world, as if the very fabric of reality had given birth to abominations. The vanishing lake had become a nightmarish prison, a place where the laws of reality no longer applied. We were trapped in a world that defied comprehension, a place where the very essence of our existence hung in the balance. As I write this account, I can still hear the echoing silence of the vanished lake, a reminder that the boundaries of reality are fragile and can be torn asunder by forces beyond our understanding. We remain trapped in that nightmarish landscape, forever haunted by the vanishing lake and the horrors it concealed. 3. The Wendigo's Hunt. The remote wilderness stretched out before us, an untamed expanse of towering trees and rugged terrain. My companions and I were seasoned campers, drawn to the rugged beauty of nature and the challenge of survivalist adventures. Little did we know that this journey into the wilderness would become a descent into terror and madness. Our group consisted of 5 experienced campers, each with a deep love for the outdoors. We set out with supplies, our knowledge of survival techniques, and the thrill of the unknown. The forest seemed welcoming, its canopy of leaves casting dappled sunlight upon the forest floor as we ventured deeper into the heart of nature's domain. The first few days were idyllic, navigating through dense underbrush, setting up camp beneath a starlit sky, and enjoying the camaraderie of the wilderness. But as the days passed, a sense of unease began to settle over us. It started as a faint whisper in the wind, a rustling of leaves that seemed to carry with it a chilling presence. We dismissed it as a product of our isolation, the natural world playing tricks on our senses. But as the whispers grew more distinct, they took on a voice, an eerie, guttural utterance that sent shivers down our spines. We knew then that we were not alone in this wilderness, and the malevolent force that lurked there was beyond our comprehension. As the nights grew darker, we began to see it, the creature that had been following us, stalking us like prey. It was gaunt and emaciated, its eyes glowing with a malevolent hunger. This was the Wendigo, an ancient and ravenous entity that had haunted the nightmares of native legends for centuries. The Wendigo's presence was palpable, its unseen eyes always watching, always waiting for an opportunity to strike. We knew that it was a predator unlike any we had encountered before, a supernatural force that hungered not only for our flesh but for our very souls. One by one, our group began to disappear. The Wendigo's attacks were swift and brutal, leaving no trace of its victims except the chilling knowledge that they were gone. Each disappearance plunged us deeper into a nightmarish struggle for survival. Our sanity and willpower pushed to the limits as we fought against a supernatural predator. With every passing day, the Wendigo's presence grew more oppressive. Its chilling cries echoed through the forest, a haunting reminder of the terror that pursued us. Sleep became elusive, our minds tortured by the knowledge that we were being hunted by an entity that defied the laws of nature. Desperation consumed us as we devised traps and strategies to outsmart the Wendigo, but it seemed to anticipate our every move. It was as if the very forest itself had turned against us, aiding our relentless pursuer. As I write this account, I am the last remaining survivor of our ill-fated expedition. The Wendigo's relentless hunt continues, its malevolent hunger never sated. I am haunted by the memories of my friends' screams, their faces twisted in terror as they were dragged into the darkness. The Wendigo's hunt is relentless, a never-ending nightmare that has become my sole reality. I shared this story as a warning to all who dare to venture into the wilderness. Beware the ancient and malevolent force that lurks there, for once it sets its sights on you, there is no escape from the Wendigo's hunt. 4. The abandoned cabin. The rain began to fall in heavy sheets, drenching us to the bone as we stumbled through the dense woods. Lightning forked through the darkened sky, and thunder rumbled like the growl of some ancient beast. We had ventured into the wilderness seeking adventure, but now we were desperately searching for shelter from the tempest. Our salvation came in the form of an old, dilapidated cabin that emerged from the trees like a forsaken sentinel. Its wooden facade was weathered and worn, the windows cracked and shattered, yet offered the promise of refuge from the storm that raged around us. With a sense of relief, we pushed open the creaking door and stepped into the dimly lit interior. The air was thick with the musty scent of decay, and the cabin bore the marks of abandonment, as if it had been forgotten by time itself. As we settled in for the night, we discovered an old diary resting on a dusty wooden table. Its pages were yellowed with age, and its ink had faded to a ghostly gray. The diary chronicled the experiences of the cabin's previous occupants, a young couple much like ourselves who had sought shelter from a storm, unlike the one that now raged outside. The entries spoke of eerie phenomena, the sound of whispering voices carried on the wind, flickering candle flames that danced to an invisible presence, and shadowy figures that moved in the periphery of their vision. The diary detailed the couple's growing sense of unease, their paranoia, and their descent into madness as the inexplicable occurrences multiplied. We read on with growing unease, our eyes widening with every chilling account. The parallels between the diary's entries and our own experiences in the cabin were undeniable. The same whispering voices, the same flickering candle flames, and the same shadowy figures that seemed to stalk us from the corners of the room. As the storm raged on outside, we realized with growing horror that we were trapped in a nightmarish cycle, reliving the same terrifying events that had driven the cabin's previous occupants to madness. The diary had become a chilling prophecy, and we were now its unwitting victims. Desperation gnawed at the edges of our sanity as we tried to make sense of the inexplicable. The storm outside showed no signs of abating, and the cabin had become a crucible of terror, each moment bringing us closer to the brink of madness. The hours stretched on in agonizing dread, and as the storm raged outside, our minds unraveled within the confines of the cabin. We knew that our only hope of escape lay in breaking the nightmarish cycle that had ensnared us, but the forces at play were beyond our comprehension. As I write this account, I am haunted by the memories of the fateful night in the abandoned cabin. We may have escaped its clutches, but the darkness that lurked within its walls will forever haunt our dreams. The diary's final entry had warned of an inescapable fate, and we had been drawn into its chilling narrative, a descent into madness from which there was no escape. 5. The unseen stalker. The decision to spend a week in the wilderness, far removed from the modern world, had seemed like a refreshing escape from the chaos of everyday life. I yearned for solitude, to disconnect from the incessant chatter of technology and immerse myself in the serene embrace of nature. Little did I know that my desire for isolation would lead me into a nightmare from which there was no escape. I ventured deep into the heart of the wilderness, my campsite nestled beneath a towering canopy of ancient trees. The tranquil beauty of the forest was both awe-inspiring and humbling, a place where the rhythms of nature replaced the cacophony of modernity. The first few days were a blissful retreat from the world. I reveled in the simple pleasures of survival, gathering firewood, catching fish from the crystal clear stream and sleeping beneath a star-studded sky. The world seemed to slow down, and my mind found solace in the tranquility of the woods. But as the days passed, a disquieting sensation settled over me. It began as a subtle awareness, a feeling that I was not alone in the wilderness. At first, I dismissed it as the product of an overactive imagination, a consequence of my isolation. But as the feeling grew stronger, I could not deny that something was watching me, lurking in the shadows of the trees. The entity, whatever it was, remained elusive and unseen, always just beyond the reach of my vision. It mimicked my every move, replicating my actions with an eerie precision. If I raised my hand, it mirrored the gesture. If I took a step, it followed in my path. It was as if the very forest itself had come to life, observing my every action with a silent, malevolent intent. The most unsettling aspect was the cryptic messages it left behind. In the dirt outside my tent, strange symbols were etched into the earth, symbols that defied interpretation but conveyed an undeniable sense of dread. Each morning, I would awaken to find new messages, as if the entity reveled in my growing paranoia. As the days turned into nights, my supplies dwindled, and my sense of unease deepened. I knew that I was not alone, that the unseen stalker was a sinister force that seemed to feed on my fear. Paranoia set in, my mind becoming a battleground of terror and desperation. Desperation drove me to confront the entity that haunted me. Armed with a makeshift torch, I ventured into the heart of the forest, determined to uncover the truth. But the darkness closed in around me, and the forest seemed to come alive with a malevolent presence. The trees whispered with sinister intent, their branches reaching out like skeletal fingers. And then, I saw it. An apparition that defied comprehension. It was a twisted, nightmarish form, a grotesque amalgamation of nature's elements, a creature that should not exist in the realm of the living. Its eyes glowed with an otherworldly malevolence, and its movements were a grotesque mockery of life. I fled in terror, but the entity pursued me relentlessly, its presence a constant reminder of the horrors that lurked within the wilderness. As I write this account, I am haunted by the memories of that week in the woods, a descent into madness from which there was no escape. The wilderness I thought I knew had become a malevolent realm, a place where the boundaries of reality blurred, and the very essence of my existence hung in the balance. The unseen stalker had become my tormentor, a reminder that some forces in the world are beyond comprehension, and that the wilderness, once a sanctuary, had become a nightmarish trap from which there was no escape. Which story caught your attention the most? Let us know in the comments below. And don't forget to like and subscribe for more content. Until next time, stay safe. And thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed today's video. Check out my website in the description below to see what I'm writing. And just below that are some suggestions related to what we talked about today. Peace.